The sack in the riverbed. The sack moved. That was the first thing Daniel Crow noticed, and for a split second, his mind refused to believe it. The wind had been howling through the canyon since dawn, dragging dust and dry leaves across the cracked earth. The riverbed below his ranch had been dry for years, just stones, bones, and forgotten things. People dumped what they didn't want there. Dead animals, broken furniture, secrets. But sacks didn't move on their own. Daniel pulled the reins hard, his horse skidding to a halt. The sun was low, bleeding gold across the valley, and his daughter Lily leaned forward in the saddle behind him. "Papa," she said softly, her small hands tightening around his coat. "What's that?" Daniel didn't answer. His jaw tightened as he slid down from the saddle, boots crunching against gravel. He had lived 38 hard years in this land. He knew the difference between fear and instinct. This was instinct screaming. The sack lay half buried near the rocks, tied at the top with rough rope. It was stained dark in places, wet in others, and then it moved again. A weak, desperate twitch. "Stay there, Lily," Daniel said, his voice low but steady. "But, Papa—" "Stay." He stepped closer, each footfall heavy. His hand went to his knife. For one terrifying moment, he thought of rattlesnakes. Then he heard it, a sound, muffled, broken, human. Daniel dropped to his knees and slashed the rope open. The sack fell apart. Inside was a girl. No, a young woman, barely more than a skeleton wrapped in torn cloth. Her skin was pale, bruised purple and blue. Dried blood clung to her hair. Her lips trembled as she tried and failed to speak. Her eyes opened, and Daniel Crow felt his chest cave in. She looked straight at him, not with fear, not with pleading, but with something deeper. Recognition. "She's alive," he whispered. Behind him, Lily slid off the horse before he could stop her. She ran closer, her boots kicking dust, her braids swinging wildly. "Lily, don't." But it was too late. The girl's eyes flicked past Daniel and locked onto the child. The air went still. Lily froze. She stared at the woman's face, then slowly walked closer, as if pulled by something she couldn't explain. She knelt beside her, ignoring the blood, the smell, the horror. The woman tried to lift her hand. It fell back to the ground. A tear slipped from her eye. Lily's breath hitched. She turned to Daniel, her voice barely louder than the wind. "Papa?" Daniel swallowed. "What is it, baby?" Lily leaned closer to the woman, her small fingers brushing the dirt beside her face. And then she whispered the words that shattered the canyon. "Papa, she's Mama." Daniel staggered back like he'd been struck. "What?" His voice cracked. "Lily, no, your Mama." "She is," Lily insisted, tears spilling now. "I remember her eyes. She used to sing to me. I remember." The woman's lips moved again. This time, a sound came out. "Leo, why?" Daniel's heart stopped. Only one person on this earth had ever called his daughter that. Only one person had vanished 6 years ago without a trace. "Sarah," he whispered. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Daniel fell to his knees. They had told him she was dead. They had told him she ran away. They had told him she was weak. And now she was here, beaten, broken, stuffed into a sack like garbage and thrown away to die. Rage rose in him like fire. "Who did this to you?" he demanded, his hands shaking as he gently lifted her. "Who?" Sarah's fingers clutched weakly at his shirt. "They said no one would believe me," she whispered. "They said you'd moved on." Daniel laughed, a raw, broken sound. "I never stopped looking," he said fiercely. "Not once." He lifted her carefully and turned toward the ranch. That was when a voice echoed from the ridge above. Well, a man drawled. "Looks like the dead don't stay buried after all." Daniel looked up. 3 men stood silhouetted against the sky, and he recognized every single one of them. The same men who had signed the papers. The same men who owned half the county. The same men who had told him his wife was gone forever. The leader smiled coldly. "You should have kept riding, Crow." Daniel stood, Sarah in his arms, Lily gripping his leg. His voice was ice. "You left her to die." The man shrugged. "Seems we failed." The wind picked up again. And for the first time in years, Daniel Crow knew this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. The men who owned the town. Daniel didn't wait for the men to draw. He turned and ran. Gravel tore under his boots as he moved uphill toward the tree line. Sarah's weight heavy but fragile in his arms. Lily ran beside him, her breath sharp, panic chasing every step. Behind them, a gunshot cracked the air. The bullet struck rock inches from Daniel's foot. "Papa!" Lily screamed. "Don't look back!" Daniel barked. "Run!" Another shot, then another. The canyon echoed with violence, the sound bouncing like laughter from the cliffs. Daniel dove into the trees, branches clawing at his face, his lungs burning. He knew this land better than anyone alive. He had hunted it, bled on it, buried memories in it. But the men behind him had money, and money bought time, guns, silence. They reached the old ravine just as hooves thundered behind them. Daniel slid down the slope, catching himself on roots, shielding Sarah's head with his arm. Lily tumbled beside him, scraped but moving. At the bottom, Daniel shoved aside a curtain of vines. The cave mouth yawned open. Inside, he whispered. They crawled into darkness just as the riders stopped above them. A voice drifted down, amused and cruel. "You can't hide forever, Crow." Daniel pressed his hand over Lily's mouth. She trembled violently, but didn't make a sound. Sarah stirred weakly in his arms. "They'll burn you out," she murmured. "That's what they do." Daniel closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He had seen that fire before, what it did to homes, to families, to truth itself. Above them, boots scraped stone. "Split up," the same voice ordered. "Check the ravine." Daniel's fingers tightened around his knife. He whispered to Lily, "No matter what happens, you don't let go of Mama." Lily nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. The men searched for nearly an hour. When they finally rode off, night had fallen thick and heavy. Only then did Daniel dare move. They reached the ranch just before midnight. Daniel didn't light a single lamp. He laid Sarah gently on the bed and cleaned her wounds with shaking hands. Every bruise told a story. Rope burns on her wrists, old scars that hadn't healed right, hunger etched into every sharp bone. Lily sat beside her, holding her hand as if afraid she might disappear again. "She used to brush my hair like this," Lily whispered, gently smoothing Sarah's tangled strands. "I remember." Sarah smiled faintly. "I remember you crying when I stopped singing." Daniel turned away before they saw his face break. Later that night, Sarah finally slept. Daniel stood at the window, rifle resting against the frame, eyes scanning the dark. That was when the knock came. 3 slow taps. Daniel froze. No one knocked after midnight, unless they wanted trouble. He stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. The sheriff stood there. Thomas Hale, an old friend, or at least he used to be. "Evening, Daniel." Hale said calmly, "Mind if I come in?" Daniel didn't lower the gun. "Depends. You here as a friend or as their messenger?" Hale's jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have brought her back." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Funny thing to say about my wife." Hale leaned closer, his voice dropping. "They're furious. You embarrassed them. You exposed something that was buried real deep. Then they shouldn't have tried to kill her." Hale sighed. "They own the land, the bank, the judges. Hell, they funded my badge." Daniel's eyes burned. "And you?" Hale hesitated. "That's what I came to figure out," he admitted. "Because what they did to Sarah wasn't just cruel. It was illegal. And if word gets out, they'll bury it," Daniel finished. "Like they bury everything." Hale nodded slowly. "Unless someone stops them." Daniel looked back toward the bedroom where Sarah and Lily slept. "They're not just coming for me," Daniel said quietly. "They want Lily." Hale's face paled. "Then you need to leave. Tonight." Daniel shook his head. "No. I ran once. I won't do it again." Hale swallowed. "Then you need proof. Real proof." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Proof of what?" "Of what they did to Sarah. Of who ordered it. Of how many others didn't survive." Daniel felt the ground shift beneath his feet. How many? He asked. Hale didn't answer right away. Too many, he finally said. Inside, Sarah stirred awake. Her eyes met Daniel from across the room, and slowly, painfully, she sat up. I can tell you where the records are, she said hoarsely. Both men turned. They kept everything, Sarah continued. Names, payments, dates. They thought it made them untouchable. Daniel crossed the room in 2 strides. Where? Sarah's gaze hardened with something that looked like courage reborn. In the place no one would ever question. She looked straight at Hale. The courthouse. Silence fell heavy. Hale exhaled sharply. That's suicide. Sarah met his stare. So was leaving me in that sack. Outside, a car engine rumbled in the distance. Daniel went to window. Headlights crept along the road toward the ranch. Too slow, too deliberate. They're here, Daniel said. Sarah reached for Lily, pulling her close. Hale backed toward the door. I'll buy you time. Daniel grabbed his arm. If you walk out there, they'll kill me anyway if this comes out, Hale said quietly. At least this way it means something. He stepped into the night. Moments later, voices rose. Angry, mocking. Then a gunshot. Lily screamed. Daniel slammed the door shut, heart pounding, fury roaring through his veins. Outside, the men laughed. And Daniel knew, with chilling certainty, this was no longer about saving his family. It was about burning the truth into the open, no matter the cost. Blood that was never meant to surface. Daniel didn't respond at first. The words sat between him and Sarah like a loaded gun. One of them is Lily's real father. The house felt suddenly smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves were listening. Daniel slowly turned to Sarah. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady now, clear in a way they hadn't been when he pulled her from the sack. This wasn't confusion or trauma speaking. This was truth. Say that again, Daniel said quietly. Sarah swallowed. Lily clung to her side, sensing the shift even if she didn't understand it. I never wanted it, Sarah said. I fought it. I tried to tell you before everything happened. Daniel's hands curled into fists. Tell me what? Sarah looked down at Lily, brushing her hair back with trembling fingers. They took me, she said, 6 years ago. The night I disappeared. I didn't run away, Daniel. I was taken. Daniel nodded once. He had always known that in his bones. They said I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to, Sarah continued. They were right. I saw papers, names, payments being moved through the land office. I didn't know what it meant then, just that it was wrong. Daniel's jaw tightened. And Lily? Sarah closed her eyes. They locked me in that house outside town. Said it was for my protection. One of them came at night, drunk, angry. Said if I just cooperated, this would all end. Daniel took a step back, like the floor had dropped beneath him. You're saying... I'm saying Lily is yours in every way that matters, Sarah said fiercely. You raised her. You loved her. You are her father. Daniel's voice broke. But biologically... Sarah opened her eyes. Yes. The word echoed like a verdict. A scream tore out of Daniel's chest. He turned away, slamming his fist into the wall hard enough to crack wood. The pain barely registered. Outside, engines idled. Shadows moved past the windows. They were circling. Lily looked between them, fear blooming in her eyes. Mama, did I do something bad? Sarah pulled her close. No, sweetheart. You are perfect. None of this is your fault. Daniel forced himself to kneel in front of Lily. Look at me, he said gently. She did. You are my daughter, he said, voice thick but certain. No one can take that from us. Ever. Lily nodded, trusting him completely. That trust nearly destroyed him. A knock slammed against the door. Not polite this time. Daniel Crow, a man's voice called. You've had your moment. Hand her over. Daniel stood. That voice, Sarah whispered. Her hands began to shake. That's him. Daniel's blood went cold. The knock came again, harder. You don't want to do this, the man continued. You're outnumbered. And that little girl, well, blood always comes home eventually. Daniel stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. The headlights illuminated 3 men. And there he was, Caleb Mercer, the richest man in the county, owner of the mills, the banks, the courthouse renovations, a man who smiled in church and destroyed lives behind closed doors. Caleb tipped his hat slowly. Evening, Daniel. Daniel aimed the rifle square at his chest. Take one more step, and I end you. Caleb smiled. You won't, not with her watching. Behind Daniel, Lily peeked through the door. Caleb's eyes flicked to her and softened. There she is, he said quietly. My girl. Daniel's finger tightened on the trigger. Don't, Sarah cried from inside. That's what he wants. Caleb raised his hands. Easy now. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to make things right. Daniel laughed, raw and broken. You left her in a sack to die. Caleb's expression hardened. That wasn't the plan. Things got complicated. You raped her, Daniel snarled. A murmur rippled through men behind him. Caleb leaned forward. Careful, Crow. Accusations like that need proof. Sarah stepped into the doorway. I am the proof, she said. Caleb's eyes locked onto hers. For the first time, his confidence faltered. You should be dead, he said softly. Not today, Sarah replied. Caleb straightened. Listen to me. If you turn over those records, if you walk away quietly, I can give Lily everything. Schools, protection, a future. Lily looked up at Daniel. Papa, why is he lying? Caleb stiffened. Daniel answered without hesitation. Because he doesn't know what love is. Caleb's smile vanished. So that's how it is, he said coldly. Then you've made your choice. He nodded once. The men behind him raised their guns. A shot rang out from the trees. One of Caleb's men dropped. Chaos exploded. Daniel dragged Sarah and Lily back inside as bullets shattered windows. Wood splintered. Glass rained down. Daniel fired back with deadly precision. Years of ranch survival kicking in. A scream pierced the night. Then sirens. Caleb cursed. Sheriff. A patrol car skidded onto the road. Another one, then another. Not Hale. Someone else. Caleb backed away slowly, eyes never leaving the house. This isn't over, he called. Blood doesn't stay buried. The engines roared to life. They were gone. Silence followed, thick and trembling. Inside the ruined house, Daniel sank to the floor. Sarah knelt beside him. What do we do now? She asked. Daniel looked at Lily, at Sarah, at the shattered home that once held peace. We take the truth to the courthouse, he said. Every name, every crime. Sarah hesitated. If we do that, Lily will know who he is. Daniel's voice was steady. She'll also know who stood up for her. Outside, dawn began to creep over the hills. But Daniel knew the hardest part was still ahead. The courthouse that breathed lies. The sun hadn't fully risen when they left the ranch. Smoke still curled from the shattered window frames, and the wind carried the smell of gunpowder across the fields. Daniel drove the truck with both hands locked on the wheel, his knuckles white, his eyes hollow but alert. Sarah sat beside him, wrapped in an old coat, Lily asleep between them. Her small fingers curled into Sarah's sleeve as if afraid she might vanish again. Say it again, Daniel said quietly. What you heard. Lily stirred but didn't wake. Sarah's voice trembled. I was crying. I thought she was asleep. I said the courthouse was a trap because I heard them talking. Daniel glanced at her. Who? The clerks, the judge's assistants, even the cleaning staff. They don't just work there, Daniel. They watch. They listen. They report. Daniel exhaled slowly. So Hale was right. Sarah nodded. The records are there, but so are their eyes. The courthouse rose in the center of town, like a monument carved from secrets. White stone, tall columns, a place meant to make people feel small and obedient. Daniel had avoided it most of his life. Ranchers do in inside buildings like that. Today, he was walking straight into its throat. They parked 2 blocks away. Sarah pulled Daniel's arm before he stepped out. If this goes wrong. It won't, he said, though he didn't believe it. Inside, the courthouse smelled of polish and paper and something rotten underneath. Boots echoed against marble floors. Heads turned. Whispers spread faster than fire. "They know," Sarah murmured. A clerk stiffened when she saw them. Another disappeared down a hallway. Daniel felt it then, the weight of being hunted without chains. They reached the records office. Locked. Daniel knocked once. Hard. No answer. He tried the handle. Nothing. A voice behind him spoke smoothly. Looking for something? Daniel turned. Judge Franklin Moore stood there, gray-haired and calm, his hands folded behind his back. A man who had sentenced thieves to decades and let powerful men walk free with smiles. "We need access to archived land and financial records," Daniel said. Immediately, Moore smiled thinly. "On what grounds?" Sarah stepped forward. "On the grounds that those records prove attempted murder, unlawful detention, sexual assault, and corruption at the highest level of this county." A murmur rippled through the hallway. Moore's eyes flicked to Lily. "That child shouldn't be here," he said. "She's exactly why we are," Daniel replied. Moore sighed. "You don't understand how this works." "Then explain it," Daniel said. Moore leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Justice isn't about truth. It's about balance. And you're about to upset it." Daniel smiled grimly. "Good." Moore straightened. "Arrest them." Two deputies stepped forward. Before they could move, a voice rang out from the entrance. "Stand down." Everyone turned. Sheriff Thomas Hale walked in. Alive, bruised, bleeding, furious. The room froze. "You shot me and left me to die," Hale said, staring straight at Judge Moore. "Turns out I'm hard to kill." Moore's face drained of color. Hale lifted a folder. "And I brought insurance." He slammed it onto the counter. Inside were copies. Names. Dates. Transfers. Signed orders. "I made copies months ago," Hale continued, "in case I grew a spine." Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. Moore backed away slowly. "This is highly inappropriate." So was throwing a woman into a sack. Hale snapped. Sirens wailed outside. More deputies entered, but not all of them looked loyal. Caleb Mercer strode in like he owned the place. "This ends now," he said calmly. "Everyone go home." No one moved. Caleb's eyes locked on Lily. "You don't belong with them," he said softly. "You belong with me." Lily tightened her grip on Daniel's hand. "No," she said clearly. "I belong with my family." Caleb's jaw tightened. "You don't even know what that word means." Daniel stepped forward. "You don't get to define it." Caleb laughed bitterly. "You think these papers will save you? The judges answer to me. The state answers to me." Hale raised his gun. "Not today." Caleb's smile faded. "You pull that trigger," Caleb warned, "and this town burns." A clerk screamed. Smoke poured from the records room. Fire. Someone had lit it. Panic erupted. Papers ignited. Alarms blared. "They're destroying the evidence." Sarah cried. Daniel ran. Flames licked the walls as he tore through the room, grabbing files, shoving them into his jacket. Smoke burned his lungs. Heat wrapped around him like a living thing. A beam collapsed behind him. "Daniel!" Sarah screamed. He stumbled out, coughing, clutching the evidence. Firefighters arrived too late. The courthouse burned. Outside, Caleb stood watching, his face calm. "You see," he said, "truth is fragile." Daniel stared at him, eyes blazing. "No," he said, "truth survives fire." Caleb leaned close, his voice a whisper. "Then let's see if it survives blood." He glanced at Lily and smiled. Cliffhanger. That night, as Daniel laid the files on the table, Sarah opened one folder and screamed. Inside was a birth certificate, Lily's name, and a signature that proved Caleb Mercer had legal custody. The truth that could not be buried. The room went silent. Sarah's scream still echoed in the air when Daniel took the birth certificate from her shaking hands. His eyes scanned the page once, then again, slower this time, as if rereading it could somehow change what it said. Caleb Mercer, legal guardian. Filed 6 years ago. Stamped. Approved. Daniel felt the rage first. Hot and blinding. Then came the fear, the kind that crawled into your bones and whispered that you were about to lose everything that mattered. Lily stood between them, small and confused, clutching her stuffed horse. "Papa," she asked softly, "why are you shaking?" Daniel knelt in front of her and forced his hands to steady. "I'm cold," he lied gently. "That's all." Sarah collapsed into a chair, sobbing. They planned this. They planned everything. Hale stood in the doorway, blood seeping through his bandage, his face grim. "That document shouldn't be legal. But it is," Daniel said quietly, "in their world." Hale nodded, which means Mercer can take her, any time, with a stroke of a pen. Outside, thunder rolled. Daniel looked at Lily, at the girl who had called him Papa since she could speak, who knew his laugh, his temper, his love. "No," he said. "He won't." Sarah looked up. "Daniel." "I won't let him," he repeated. "Not now. Not ever." Hale hesitated. "Then we do this the only way left." Daniel met his eyes. "Tell me." "We take this beyond the county. Beyond Mercer's reach." Hale said, "State investigators. Federal auditors. Media." Sarah shook her head. "He'll run. Or worse." Hale's jaw tightened. "Only if he sees it coming." That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees, watching the road, listening to the wind. Lily slept curled against Sarah inside, peaceful in a way that broke his heart. Just before dawn, headlights appeared. One car, then another. Caleb Mercer arrived with papers and armed escorts. Daniel stepped onto the porch as they stopped. Caleb exited his car slowly, confident as ever. He held a leather folder under one arm. "Morning," he said. "I'm here for my daughter." Daniel didn't move. "You're not taking her." Caleb sighed. "Daniel, don't make this ugly." "You already did," Daniel replied. Caleb opened the folder and held up the document. "Court order. Signed this morning." Behind him, deputies shifted uneasily. Sarah stepped out beside Daniel, her voice strong despite her fear. "She is not yours." Caleb looked at her coolly. "Biology says otherwise." Daniel spoke then, calm, deadly calm. "You raped her." The word hung in the air. Caleb laughed. "Prove it." Hale's voice rang out from behind them. "We can." Everyone turned. Black SUVs rolled in behind the deputies. Men in suits stepped out, badges flashing. State investigators. Federal agents. Cameras. Caleb's smile vanished. Hale stepped forward. "You forgot one thing, Mercer." Caleb clenched his jaw. "And what's that?" "Truth spreads," Hale said, "especially when you try to burn it." An agent approached Caleb. "Mr. Mercer, you're under arrest for conspiracy, corruption, sexual assault, and attempted murder." Caleb backed away. "This is ridiculous. I own this town." "Not anymore," the agent replied. Caleb turned, desperation flashing in his eyes. "Lily!" She stepped back instinctively, pressing against Daniel. "No," she said. "You scare me." Those words broke something in Caleb's face. As he was handcuffed, he shouted, "She's mine." Daniel answered quietly, "She chose." Months later, the courtroom was packed. The evidence survived the fire. Hale's copies. Witnesses who finally spoke. Women who had been silenced for years. Sarah testified. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She told the truth. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty. On every count. Outside, reporters swarmed. Daniel didn't stop. He went home. 1 year later, Daniel stood on the same porch where it had all begun. The land was green again. The house repaired. Sarah stood beside him, healed in ways that mattered most. Lily ran across the yard, laughing, free. The adoption papers rested on the table inside. Finalized. Legal. Permanent. Lily ran into Daniel's arms. "Papa," she said, grinning, "you promised to teach me to ride today." He smiled, tears in his eyes. "I did." Sarah watched them, her voice soft. "She saved me." Daniel shook his head. "You saved her." The wind moved through the valley, carrying away the last echoes of cruelty. Some truths take fire to be revealed. Some families are forged, not born. And some fathers are chosen by love, not blood.